Am I on? Hold on, buddy.
I got an echo. You guys hear me? Hear me? Oh, hopefully it works. Well, if anybody's out there, I don't know. Hopefully you can listen to me. Hopefully you can hear me. In about 5 minutes, they're going to start the debate. and I'll tell you where my ranking is so far. It has hold on, let me adjust this. I've never done this live, so I'm just man. Uh, okay. My hat is transparent. Oh man. I didn't see that one coming. That's all right. Um, so I don't like anybody out of this whole thing. All right, let's see. So I can't see the chat um on here, but I can see it on my phone, you know. But anyway, so back to what I was saying. I don't like anybody on here. Check. Okay. I don't like any of the candidates, but I will rank them from best to worst of where I think it's at. So Braun is number one, Rittenhauer's number two, Hill is number three, Doden is number four. Oh, I'm missing one, right? Oh, Crouch. Yeah. Doden's number four, Crouch is number five, and Chambers is dead last. And here's why. Braun exactly hasn't been like the ideal candidate, and that's fine. For those who don't know, and I don't think he's made it back, but there's a vote in the Senate today for that whole BS Ukraine package that the taxpayers are totally going to get hosed on. So um, it is what it is with Braun. Uh, Number two is Rittenhauer. She's really like the dark horse out of everything. She's the one who wants to scream at the top of her lungs of what the establishment is really like, but she's not. And everybody has too much to lose. She knows how powerful they are, and she doesn't want to make too many waves. But good for her for getting into the dance, her making to the very final debate. I think it was complete BS of how they hosed her on the previous debates where they wouldn't allow her on the stage because she didn't have enough money. Listen, if she's on the ticket, she should be on the stage. It's really just that plain and simple. But anyway, moving on. Who was number three again? Hill? Yeah, Hill. The only reason why I don't like Hill is because he talked about the DEI, about wanting it out of Indiana. And last week or a week or two ago, he was on mouthwash. And I asked the question, are you going to get the DEI out of the Indiana GOP? And he said no, but he's going to get it out of the state. So if you're willing to get it out of a state, why are you not getting it out of your own party? And the only reason why I bring that up is because the DEI director of the Indiana GOP wants reparations, right? Everybody in the GOP talks so much garbage about the DEI hires, about the initiatives, and how racist they are, but they don't have a problem being in their own party. And if Hill's going to bring it up, but then he's not going to do anything about it, then what's the point? Number four is Doden. I am not a big fan of Doden after I read his book, both of them, two books. He talks about, yeah, Polly, totally agree. She's very lunatic-y. But she's a nice lady. I've met her in person, not personally, but the events that I go to, she was there and she's talking about it. She had a couple of good quotes that I wrote down. And so back to Doden, I read both of his books, and he talks about how he got IEDC money, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, or his own develop company to do work on I think it was the Electric Works project in Fort Wayne. That's one thing, but nobody ever talks about that. All these articles that's going on, nobody talks about it. Are we getting ready to go started? We got another minute or two. So I didn't like that. He also talked about his buddy who is the CEO of Parkview Health, how great and dandy he is. But then when you go and look up the nonprofit, he's making like 700 grand a year. And he was at an event not long ago, and he was talking about how these houses, they were like 25, 30 grand. But after me, now they're worth 250 grand. It's like, well, now you just kicked everybody out of their own home. Crouch is easily explainable. She let Indiana get totally hosed
This
by Holcomb
program
and
is
did
made
nothing.
possible with the support of the Indiana Broadcasters
All right, relax over
Association.
there.
The
She did
Indiana
nothing but stood by while Holcomb totally raked over the people of Indiana. And then Chambers is obviously, he's the establishment pick, 100%. They are going balls deep on this guy. They're throwing everything at to help him out, and he has no problem stealing water from Tippecanoe County and feeding into that a complete embarrassment of in Boone County. But here we go. Braun didn't make it. So I always look at the order and look at who do they have in the center. They have Doden in the center, which means he is the guy. He might be number 2 after today. For polling, anyway. Can you guys hear it?
Good evening and welcome to the Indiana Debate Commission's 2024 primary debate for governor, broadcast live from Hine Hall Auditorium on the campus of IUPUI. This event is the final formal debate of the 2024 primary season, the final opportunity for Hoosier voters to hear from the Republicans vying to succeed Governor Eric Holcomb, who is barred by Indiana's Constitution from seeking a 3rd consecutive term.
Yeah,
Of
same
course,
here.
the
I wish I could
winner
have seen Braun
of the
too.
May 7 Republican gubernatorial primary will advance to November's general election. I am your moderator, John Schwantes, the host of WFYI Public Media's
Johnny Schwantes.
Indiana Lawmakers Program, the state's longest running
Schwantes.
public affairs show. This debate is made possible by the generosity of our major underwriters, AARP Indiana, the Indiana Broadcasters Association, and the Indiana State Bar Association, as well as additional support from the Indiana Coalition for Open Government, the Indiana League of Women Voters of Indiana, the Hoosier State Press Association Foundation, and Comcast.
Yeah, that's a great point,
The
Polly.
Indiana Debate Commission is
Actually, I
dedicated
saw one
to
at
putting
a,
voters first.
An
Accordingly,
Avon
we
that had
invited
gotten blown
members of
down,
the public
and then a
to
bunch of
submit
geese pooped
questions
on it.
about the issues
It even tells you
of
the geese
greatest
don't like
concern
Chambers.
to them. More than 120 people submitted nearly 200 questions, and that input formed the basis of the questions that I will pose this evening. None of the questions has been shared with the candidates or
Allegedly.
their campaign staffs. The order of the candidates' introductions and their positions on stage were determined by drawing. Enough housekeeping. Now, without further delay, let's meet the participants. Brad Chambers of Indianapolis, founder and CEO of Buckingham Companies, a real estate investment firm, and former head of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation under Governor Holcomb. Suzanne Crouch of Evansville, Indiana's 52nd Lieutenant Governor, and a former state auditor, state representative, and county commissioner. Eric Doden of Fort Wayne, founding partner of Domo Development Company and Domo Ventures, a private equity firm, and former president of the Indiana Economic Development
Dude, wear a
Corporation
tie.
under Governor Mike Pence.
I think that's the only blazer
Curtis
that he
Hill
has,
of
suit
Elkhart,
jacket that he has.
former Indiana Attorney General, and
I'm
former
Suzanne
4-term
Crouch.
Elkhart County
Oh, Curtis Hill.
prosecutor. And Jamie Rittenauer of Indianapolis, a former compliance officer, athletic director, and executive secretary who is now a stay-at-home mother of 5. And you'll notice there are 5 lecterns on stage instead of 6 as we had hoped. U.S. Senator Mike Braun, who of course is also seeking the Republican nomination for governor, was unable to attend this evening. He was called back to Washington for an important Senate vote on a foreign aid package. So he unfortunately could not join us this evening.
There would have been such a dramatic
The
entrance
candidates
if
have
he like
agreed to a set of
parachuted
rules
in.
which
He's like,
includes
"Don't
a
you worry,
prohibition
Indiana.
on
I'm
printing
here to
prepared
save the
notes."
day."
This evening's debate will feature a mix of yes or no questions answerable by a show of hands and a more traditional set of open-ended questions of various lengths. And I will not hesitate to cut off candidates who fail to abide by the stated time limits. And I'll take it a step further. I will try to gently nudge people back on path if they're addressing a question and sort of stray from the point of the question. So I'll do it with a smile on my face and with kindness in my heart, but we'll try to address the matters at hand that voters care about most. All right, now we have dispensed with all of the housekeeping I think we need to do tonight. Let's get to the questions. This first round of questions will be open-ended, and I will give you a time limit for each one. The candidate who receives the first question will have 1 minute to answer that question. The other candidates generally will have a shorter period of time that I will specify, and you can use that to agree, disagree, or add any other thoughts that you would like. So according to the drawing, our first question will go to Mr. Chambers, and he will have 1 minute to respond. A 2024 study by Forbes Advisor ranked Indiana the second best state in the nation in which to start a business, citing the state's low $100 registration fee, state funding for small business startups, a high business survival rate, a reasonable cost of living, and a high percentage of working age residents.
How do you make that number
What
one?
specifically would you do to nudge us from number 2 to number 1?
What'd I
Again, you
say?
have a minute.
Thanks, John. Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate the audience and this opportunity to speak to voters. Listen, entrepreneurship is extremely important. I am one. I started a company from nothing in 1984, from zero. I know the
84,
journey.
good year.
I know how difficult the journey is to start a business, to grow a business, and keep a business going for 40 years. I'm a career job creator, a career problem solver. And so while I'm pleased to see that Indiana's ranked number 2 for small and medium-sized businesses, there's more to do. And I started to do that as Secretary of Commerce for the state of Indiana, working for my $1 a year as an appointed position. We need to make sure more capital is available to innovators and entrepreneurs. We need to lean into the technology sector. We formed a website called Connect IND for high school students and for college students if they wanted to learn about entrepreneurship. We need to start earlier with education and educating our high schoolers about the opportunities to work for yourself in this state. We have terrific entrepreneurs. Colonel Eli Lilly is one of them. I'm sorry.
I'm afraid we're out
Yeah,
of
that's fine,
time.
John. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, the Colonel would appreciate you ending
Yeah,
on him, though.
that's right.
Let's go then to each of you will
Corrupt.
have 30
Corrupt.
seconds to, again, offer a response to much the same question. How can we take an already strong economic set of circumstances here in Indiana
Crouch is
and take
taller
it to the
than
next
Brent
level?
Chambers, huh?
Curtis Hill.
Well, the way that we take an already strong state and take it to the next level is very simple. We get government out of the way. We need to cut regulations and make sure that we allow our entrepreneurs to work and to move forward. We need to provide tax incentives to lower taxes to make sure that the economy is strong and robust. But it's really a matter of making sure that government is limited in its capacity to stay in the way of business as it's growing and developing.
Very good.
Short,
Mr.
sweet.
Doden, same question to you.
Well, this is at the heart and soul of our Indiana Main Street initiative. For 50 years, we've ignored our small towns and the 2.5 million people that live there. And as we begin to restore communities across the state with the help of local leaders in the private sector, this will lead to tremendous small business growth and opportunities. We've already seen this happen in every community that we begin to restore, and this is why we're excited about what we're doing with our Indiana Main Street initiative and just restoring small towns.
Ms. Crouch.
As a state representative, auditor of state, and lieutenant governor, I played a key role in turning Indiana around. I want to continue that by eliminating the state income tax. Not only will we put $2,000 back in the pockets of average Hoosiers, but according to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the income tax is the single most tax that could help if we could
so you do
eliminate
tax
it,
the
small
tax.
business growth. So that is what I want to do, put money in your pocket, help small businesses grow, and attract people to Indiana when we become a no-income tax state.
And Ms. Rittenauer.
Well, I was asked a similar question this morning in an interview. I was asked, how do you keep the good times rolling? And my answer was, I've been on the ground for 2.5 years, and the Hoosiers are not telling me that the good times are rolling. Right now, we've got over 100,000 jobs that cannot be placed. We have small businesses that are looking for employees. And so what I say is that every senior that graduates in the state of Indiana should be doing an apprenticeship before they graduate. We want to make sure that our seniors, our next generation, are taken care of. That's not easy to do in a state where education is failing, but Indiana goodness will bring that to Hoosiers.
Indiana goodness.
good.
There we go.
We'll go on to another question, and we will return to the order. I think I may
I
have
don't think you should be forcing kids to do
inadvertently
an
botched
apprenticeship.
the order in which you were before. So
How do we rebut if we want to have a tag on or a rebuttal?
I'll tell you what, because I'm a kind, generous person, and I'm going to look at you to keep you on track with the aforementioned smile, 15 seconds. Go ahead.
No, I'm not asking, I'm just asking the process by which. I don't have a rebuttal right now, but in the future, I'm
All right.
sure to have a rebuttal.
All right, now you have that ace in the hole. Very
Yeah.
good.
So
All right.
Will you call me, or do I raise my hand?
Well, it's not a classroom, but a raising of the hand would be good.
Why was this not figured
certainly
out
if somebody
before?
mentions you or calls you out on a policy, I will make sure that you are given those the time to talk to that. All right, so the order has been restored, and we will continue now with a question to Mr. Hill.
Wow, turning out just
Some
fine.
businesses have voiced concerns that Indiana's social policies in areas such as abortion and LGBTQ rights might hurt our convention
It's not.
business and our ability to attract and retain talent needed to grow
It's
Indiana's economy. How do you respond to these concerns? And you have a minute to do that.
Well, I think we need to understand what kind of a state we live in. We are a state that's about families. We want to make sure that our families are at the center of what we do here in the state. Economic development and economic growth is a wonderful opportunity for us, but not at the cost of who we are as Hoosiers. We were the first state to have a firm pro-life position, banning abortion. Businesses know when they come into this state, that's what to expect. So we don't change who we are to be attractive to the outside world. We need to maintain our standards. We need to be the type of state that's welcoming to families, welcoming to businesses, and doing the best job that we can to move our agenda forward.
And we will continue with
Just say
additional
we're not here to
responses
kill
from the remainder
babies,
of
man.
the
If you don't
candidates
like
here.
it,
30
get
seconds
out.
apiece. We'll go to Mr. Doden. Your response about social policies and any possible impact they might have on our economic development.
Well, I think, I've made this clear. I'm ardently pro-life. I think what people are looking for are leaders of conviction. And I'm ardently pro-life. I think it's a human rights issue. I think it's also a religious issue. But we're also doing creative things like zero-cost adoption, where you have an adoption fund that will help parents not only pay for adoption, but the aftercare. And
That's gonna
these
get
are policies.
weaponized
If you look at our
so
policies,
bad.
that you should go look at our website at dodenforindiana.com. We have them all in writing, and they've all been approved by people like you. These are policies that everyone can agree with and get behind.
Ms. Crouch?
We are a culturally conservative state, but one of the things we have to do a better job of is telling the authentic story of Indiana. I head up the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, and while our neighboring states have spent anywhere from $20 to $60 million a year telling their story, we have historically spent $2 million. We now have additional resources to tell that authentic story of Indiana.
Ms. Rittenauer?
What?
Indiana, the Conservative Party has done a poor job of talking about the reality that we're in a moral crisis in our country right now. We need to support our families. We all know that the reason why we are where we are right now is because there is a crisis in the family. The family is broken. The state of Indiana is for life. We believe that you reap what you sow. And so we want to be a state that encourages that in all ways. It's not just from the womb to the tomb. It's in education with our children. It's in our small businesses. We are a state that stands for life, and we are very proud to be that.
Best answer
Mr.
so
Chambers.
far.
I believe we need to keep families at the center of our everyday lives. I believe we need to keep education at the center of our everyday lives. I believe we need to continue to build on quality of life for all Hoosiers, for our kids and our grandkids to build their lives in Indiana. And I believe we need to have economic opportunity for everybody to build their lives in Indiana and continue to lean into the Midwest values and the conservative values of the state.
Very good.
Now they're
Our
all
next
blanks.
question goes to Mr. Doden. As I mentioned in the introduction, a few moments ago, I pointed out that you, of course, headed the Economic Development Corporation under Governor Pence. What role would the
used his
IEDC
money.
play in your administration, and how do you respond to critics who argue that the IEDC interferes with free enterprise, that it lacks transparency, favors certain regions, and essentially is able to pick economic winners and losers? 1 minute.
Yeah, I've been very clear on this, that the IDC should not be spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money buying land in one county, and then discover we have a water problem, and then taking water and resources from a smaller community to central Indiana. This is just inappropriate behavior. What the IDC was under our leadership was a place that businesses could come from all over the state to get help dealing with the bureaucracy of government. And that is the role that the IDC will play under my leadership. I do not believe that the IDC should be the LEAP Economic Development Corporation. It should be the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. And that is the kind of focus we're going to have with the IDC. But we still need, businesses need help all over the state. You know, people call us all the time and said, I'm having a difficult time getting a permit. I'm having a difficult time getting this information. And that is the proper function of the IDC, and that's the role it will play under my leadership.
Just say that we need
Ms.
to
Crouch?
dismantle it.
As governor, I'll flip the script on economic development. We will empower our local and regional economic development organizations so we can have true collaboration and partnership. That's how we are able to grow our economy. But also eliminating the state income tax puts money into Hoosiers'
Here we go again.
pockets. It helps small businesses grow, and then it attracts workers to Indiana.
Ms. Rittenauer.
Huh?
The Indiana Economic Development Corporation is not what Hoosiers want in the state of Indiana.
It's true.
They want to be able to know where their property tax money is going. Actually, what they want is no property tax. They want to be able to know why we put a whale of a company in the middle of a desert-like situation where it's going to take $2 billion to get the water to it, which, again, they do not want this. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation also has a regional office in China. With billion-dollar companies comes billions of strings. We have to be very aware that when these companies come into our state, they are also bringing all of their lobbyists and all of their ideology. We need to rebuild Indiana. There are many vacant buildings in our state that we can occupy. We do not have to expand. We can rebuild, which will save taxpayer money.
Very good. And Mr. Chambers, I'm glad you asked me earlier about how you get
Yeah.
rebuttal time. You may want to use it.
Yeah, we may need to get a bigger clock.
Several people here certainly talked about the IEDC during your leadership.
Yeah.
You oversaw that agency certainly under Eric Holcomb's administration, and in fact we're in place when the LEAP project took
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah.
Weigh in on that. A couple people have not referred to you by name, but certainly
we're all looking
that's an
at you,
agency
Chambers.
that you oversaw.
John,
for-
it's a terrific contrast between career politics and small thinking and big thinking that's going to put more money in Hoosiers' pockets. Under my leadership, for $1 a year, I stepped away from my business for $1 a year. We grew the economy by $51 billion in 2 years, and those are high-wage jobs. Wages in Indiana are below U.S. average. That's unacceptable to me. We went out and solved that, bringing in $51 billion worth of high-wage jobs, transforming communities all over the state, from Kokomo to St. Joe County to Allen County to Vigo County. So, to say that it doesn't have a role, we are competing against Ohio and China and North Carolina. And we're either going to win or we're not going to win. But they will take those jobs if we don't want them in Indiana, to keep our kids and our grandkids here, to keep the kids that are graduating for Purdue. Do I got time? 2 years ago, I was sitting in Seoul, South Korea, with a company called SK Hynix. 2 weeks ago, I'm in Tippecanoe County celebrating a $4 billion investment with high-wage jobs in the semiconductor industry that Ty Dunk sponsored in the CHIPS Act and that Senator Braun vetoed and didn't support. If we listened to Senator Braun, we wouldn't have that $4 billion investment with high-wage jobs. We're either planning to win or we're not in this state.
So he has
All
no
right. Mr.
problems
Hill.
using
Well,
taxpayers'
the big problem
money.
here,
Don't be clapping
Thank
for this
you.
jerk off.
the big problem here is that the IEDC is a shadow government. We're talking about a quasi-agency. What does ever quasi mean? We're taking public money and putting it into an organization that hides the ball, lack of transparency. So all these wonderful things that Brad talks about, that's fine if you're playing above board and playing with an open deck. Under my administration, we will rein them in and make sure that they're providing the resources across the board and in balance with the rest of the state, certainly not picking winners and losers, and the LEAP project is a prime example of the state gone wrong.
I see we have some interested parties down there who want to weigh in this.
Yes.
Let's take our All right, we're going to deviate from the script. About 15 seconds for each of you who wants to address this. We'll start down at the end.
Sure,
with
I'd love to go first.
Ms. Rittenauer, go
I
ahead.
was just noticing that Brad didn't mention Boone County, because Boone County would be the county that is having all of the water taken from them. I actually met a man that was from Boone County, and he came up to me and he said to me, "This is not our Indiana anymore." And so I would like to know if Brad can address the many Hoosiers in the state that don't feel like it's their state of Indiana anymore.
Let's go.
Because they're
All
not
right.
they're not about the billions of
15
dollars and
all right,
billions of
let's-
strings.
Ms.
Let's
Crouch, do you want to weigh in on
You
this
know,
too?
as a former county commissioner, you have to have collaboration. And visiting with the Boone County and Tippecanoe County commissioners, there has not been that collaboration between the state and local government. That's absolutely critical. That's why I want to empower local and economic development organizations to have that true partnership.
All right, Mr. Doden, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, I think we need to have a 92 county strategy in which every community
Shut
has
up,
an
Doden.
opportunity to be successful, and where we recognize that small business and startups drive our economy. We all enjoy and appreciate the large investments that are made, but small businesses drive our economy.
Mr. Hill, can you get more applause this time, just with a mere introduction?
I think I can. I think I can. I'm kind of concerned that the Lieutenant Governor is suggesting that there needs to be something done about the Economic Development Corporation. That's a part of her administration. So we have two people here on stage that are actually part of the EDC problem. And we need to be able to fix that problem by bringing transparency into the process.
All right, what we're going to do. We got it after this time. Now, wait a minute. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick with the order. We're going to give Mr. Chambers his time to respond. And
Chambers
those
getting
of
beat
you
up
who
right now. I
have,
love
been-
it.
We can't spend our whole time on this question, although certainly it is a
Oh,
point
we
of contention.
could.
But let me see where we go with this. Please take it away.
I'm going to need more than 15 seconds, I'm just telling you. Listen, the fact that he defines tens of thousands of high-wage jobs coming to Indiana as a problem tells you that he's not the right leader for Indiana. We need to grow our economy. To grow our economy and put more money in people's pockets to fix education, to support our police and our firefighters and address mental health. Number two, on water. There is an abundance of water in this state, but the career politicians like Suzanne Crouch didn't take the time and didn't have the interest in studying it and knowing that it's an asset that we can use strategically against our competitors like Ohio and Michigan in Illinois.
This guy's a
so we have an abundance
psychopath.
of water. It's a transportation issue. Bringing in outside investment to pay for that, not taxpayers.
That's
Now,
crazy.
Two of you cited, we'll get to you, hold on. Ms. Crouch, two people have suggested that you're a career politician, and Mr. Hill suggested that as part of the administration, you should have been more vocal, perhaps, as it related
This
to
is
your
awesome.
concerns now articulated about the
I am
LEAP
proud
project.
of my service as a public servant.
I'm
And I have
so
voted for the
proud
largest
of my
property
service.
tax cut in our state's history. I pushed for broadband expansion, stood up for families that were being victimized by the FSSA, ended up standing up for people that are struggling with mental illness and addiction. Yeah, I'm proud of my service, Mr. Chambers, and certainly Mr. Hill.
This is getting good. All right.
Yeah, that's exactly what we
Ms.
wanted.
Rittenauer, finish us off on this question.
Sure, let's just finish it off. So here's the bottom line, Hoosiers. In case you did not know, there are many Hoosiers in the state of Indiana that are losing their land because the IEDC came in and courted them for pricing that was way above the value of the land, which makes it hard for people to compete for that land here in the state of Indiana. Here's what's important, and first of all, I would love to get on the record where all those 10,000 jobs are. We're 100,000 jobs that need to be filled in the state of Indiana. We need to rebuild and not expand with billion-dollar companies that bring billion-dollar strings.
There we go. Let's go.
Tell you what.
Final governor's debate. This is what I wanted, boys.
It's interesting. I've
and
been
girls.
around Indiana in politics for a long time. I never thought I'd see Republicans fighting so much over economic development. I didn't back in the Bob Orr days. It's interesting. All right, so let's not
about
leave.
transparency.
Let's compromise. We won't leave economic development entirely, but we'll give our vocal cords
really
a little bit
talking
of a
about
break
the
and we'll use
IDC,
our
not
hands with
economic
raising of the
development.
hands to show on this one. So in 2022, Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act. This law, which of course was co-authored by Indiana Senator Todd Young, co-authored with Chuck Schumer, authorized $280 billion in new funding for domestic research and manufacturing in the high-tech sector. Senator Braun, who again is not with us this evening, voted against that measure. Obviously, as co-author, Todd Young supported it. Show of hands, how many of you think that Mike Braun took the right vote on that issue?
What was the legislation?
The CHIPS Act. Do you agree that it was a flawed bill, and would you have voted the way that, in fact, Senator Young did? Just show me your hands here.
I support Senator Young, if that's your question.
Oh, I messed you up by suggesting Braun, and I switched it.
Yeah,
All right, let's make this.
have a hard time
All right.
raising our hand
Yep.
for Mike
Yep.
Braun.
All right. All right. Let's make this easier. Let's make this easier. Had you been in the Senate, would you have voted yes or no? All of you who would have voted for the CHIPS Act, raise your hand. So we have, for those listening, we have Mr. Chambers, Mr. Doden,
Yep,
and those who would have voted against.
Enemies.
We have Ms. Rittenauer, and we have Mr. Hill,
And Crouch just voted on
Ms.
neither.
Crouch. Did you raise your hand one way or the other?
You know, I would vote against it based upon what I know. But, you know, I was talking about hypothetical questions. I'm not sure that's what we're here to discuss.
Oh my God!
Well, there's
hey,
not much
Crouch.
hypothetical, though, about the notion of
If you
plants
didn't eat
that are
breakfast
opening in
today,
the
how would you
high-tech
feel?
sector, which many states across the country are benefiting.
I just had a
No,
question on that.
No, we're not going to have questions at this
Okay,
point.
no
Sorry. No, I asked the questions. Sorry. Remember, I said I'd be kind and gentle. Don't
Push it,
me.
lady.
Let's get back to, at the risk of restoring some sanity and some semblance of timing, to the open-ended questions, which, again, our order goes back to Ms. Crouch. Indiana currently has one of the lowest income tax rates in the country among states that actually charge an income tax, and soon will have the lowest rate in the nation. Yet you wish to eliminate the income tax entirely, as you pointed out in your opening statement. Is it realistic to think that you can take away $8 billion, which is more than a third of Indiana's tax revenue, without hurting services and programs that you've said you care about deeply, such as caregiver pay for Hoosiers with disabled family members? And you will have 1 minute to answer.
You know, I'm one to lead the fight to eliminate the state income tax. I travel Indiana. Hoosiers are struggling today due to the high cost of living, inflation, and Bidenomics. We can put thousands of dollars back into their pockets every year. Now, my opponents will scream bloody murder and say we can't do it. But that money's yours, not theirs. And you will always spend it more wisely than the government. And so it has to be phased in. It can't happen overnight. We have to have triggers in place to protect against economic downturns. But as former Vice Chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, as former Auditor of State, we can absolutely do it. We do it by limiting government growth. We do it by ending wasteful government spending. And we do it by finding efficiencies in government. When we do, we give you money back, which you'll put into the economy, which grows our revenues. We end up allowing small businesses to grow and prosper, and then we attract people to Indiana. And today, where are they moving to? Tennessee, Texas, Florida, South Dakota, no income tax states who, by the way, their GDP and their population is growing at greater rates than Indiana.
All right.
We need to be competitive.
All right.
You want to know why that is, though?
Well,
It's
I'll
not for
start
the
by
reasons you
saying,
think.
whenever I wasn't included in the two debates, it wasn't my voice that they weren't including. It was the Hoosier voice. Hoosiers want a true conversation about property tax in this state. And the reason is because property tax has been raised for many over 40%.
Crouch is nuts.
And so when we're having these conversations, we need to have the conversations at the Hoosier dining room table. Right now, when we talk about income tax, what we are most concerned about is this phasing in. Because to the everyday voter, when they hear phasing in, they hear that's not going to happen. So we are looking to look at property taxes, and we think that we can have a real conversation on the ground with our local offices on May 8th when you elect me to be your Republican governor in the primary.
All right.
You didn't even answer the question.
Yeah, this is a political talking point if there ever was one. She has not articulated a plan to cut $12 billion out of our budget, number
About
one.
8, but
She
okay.
tweeted 2 weeks ago that vote for me and it'll be the last time you pay income taxes. So that's inconsistent with this phasing in concept she's got. She's not told us how much she's going to have to cut from education or public safety or police or mental health or health care or quality of life of initiatives. I go
Quality
around
of
the
life
state
initiatives,
and
shut
not a Hoosier that I've met believes that this is doable.
That
Very
it?
good. Mr. Hill.
Well,
the income
Chambers
tax,
loves
the
taxes.
tax
Don't forget.
proposal is a gimmick. It's not realistic. But what we can really offer are some solutions to our tax situation. We've got the Mike Brown gas tax. That was the biggest tax that we put in the state's Indiana history. And it's not the only big tax that Mike has. The CARES Act is the largest tax increase in the history of mankind, $4 trillion. And he's responsible for that as well. So we need to take a comprehensive approach at what we look at for reducing taxes and providing a fair process for taxation in this state.
Mr. Doden.
Well, right now the General Assembly is studying, how we can properly reduce in a responsible way the income tax. But the most important thing I hear from voters all over the state of Indiana, especially our seniors, is property taxes and the fact that our seniors are at risk of losing their homes because of the rising cost of property taxes, and that's just wrong. That's why we're proposing that we'll freeze property taxes for seniors, giving them surety, and then make sure that we reduce the rate of growth, and that we'll have to work with the General Assembly, but that's what we're going to focus on.
Didn't he just say he wants to increase growth
Since
in
you have
rural
been,
areas?
the suggestion is you have unleashed a gimmick here on Hoosier voters. Let's give you at least 15 seconds to answer those accusations.
Well, I'm talking about a tax cut, not a tax replacement. And if my opponents understood the legislative process, they would also understand that it can end for certain Hoosiers. And in addition to that, we also have to understand that it's not going to happen overnight. And by the way, we've been phasing it in. We were at 3.4%. Today we're at 3.1%. In 2027, we're going to 2.9%. Let's just keep going that direction. When we have excess surplus in revenues, put it towards eliminating the income tax. We can get there, helping Hoosiers, small businesses, attracting people to Indiana.
All right. And I'm not here to represent Mike Braun, but I will just say I've heard enough of his talking points at the debates. When we talk about the CARES Act, he said every member of Congress essentially voted for that. And for as far as the infrastructure, the gas.
Makes him a follower, not a leader.
Well, the gas with good company.
You would have done it too.
And he would point
Curtis.
out
Shut
that
up.
on the notion of the gas tax, it was important to keep the crossroads of America in terms
For not
of.
speaking for Mike Braun, you're doing a pretty good job of it.
Well, that's the. Earned applause. That's good. All right. Let's before, and this goes to you, Ms. Rittenauer, before we leave the subject of taxes, many voters submitted questions to the debate commission asking about rising property taxes. One, a resident of Brownsburg, asks, considering the way house values have skyrocketed over the last few years and the resulting increases in property taxes, what are you going to do to protect homeowners? And you'll have a minute.
Hoosiers, this is a really difficult question. And the reason for that is because whenever you're talking about taxes, you need to have that conversation, not just at the state level, but at the local level. On May 8th, my intention is to go to all 92 counties to talk to the county commissioners and to have a real conversation about lowering your property taxes. What we know is that right now there are a lot of referendums that are coming from the schools. We love our schools. We want to support our teachers. We want our teachers to get paid well. But we are growing and expanding our schools at a rate that is not able to be kept up by the property tax owner. This is very concerning in the state of Indiana. $37,000 median income, $68,000 per household. We think that that's probably over the actual numbers. So right now what we need to do is we need to have a conversation at the county level, which I'm going to do. This is not a gimmick. And I would really exhort you to think about who is running for governor and what they're doing with your money, because somebody lost $1 billion on the stage, and that probably also should be a concern.
Stop you right there. All right, Mr. Chambers, 30 seconds to answer the
Well,
question.
lower taxes is always the goal. I do believe property taxes need to be addressed. I would look at the assessments. They're different from county to county. People don't understand them. So simplify the assessment process and make them uniform across the state to the extent we can do that. Create consistency and understanding for people, and create some opportunities for seniors not to get kicked out of their house and have portability of the built-in gains they have. Listen, Suzanne Crouch and Mike Braun, in their 50 years of combined service, public service, have raised taxes 50 times, and she's not credible on cutting taxes, with specifically 7 times cutting taxes in her term as in the legislature. So property taxes need to be focused on. I have a plan for it, and it is a priority.
Hard to squeeze 50 years into 15 seconds, but let's try to stick to that. Mr. Hill.
You ready for me?
Yes, please. Go ahead, 30 seconds, I should say.
Property tax is certainly a concern by a lot of people, but depending on where you go, so are income taxes and so are sales tax. We need to have a comprehensive approach. This isn't a gimmick. It's not a solution, a quick fix. We need to have a long-term plan for how to move forward. The problem is with the assessed values. The assessed values in every community are different. We need to work a strategy where the state works with the locals to come up with a good program so that we can manage our property taxes in an efficient, fair way, particularly as it pertains to young people and seniors.
Mr. Doden, what are you going to do about property taxes?
Yeah, that's exactly the foundation of our plan. So what we've seen is growth of property taxes by 15% a year, in some cases multiple years in a row. And that is very hard to plan for if you're on a fixed income. That's why we're proposing that we'd freeze it for seniors, but we'd also, basically the growth would only be allowed to be about 5% a year under our plan, which makes it easier for people in their budgets to plan. So that is the foundation of our plan for how we help people with property tax issue that's raging right now across the state.
And Ms. Crouch.
You know, as a state representative, I voted for the largest property tax cut in our state's history, and I'm certainly open to that. And my opponents are entitled to their own opinions, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And as a state representative, I cut taxes a dozen times, and that's why I want to continue to cut taxes and eliminate the state income tax, putting money into your pockets, helping small businesses grow, attracting people to Indiana.
All right. We are going to give those arms another chance to flex. Not to the point you need Tommy John surgery or anything, but we're going to see if we can, again, rest the vocal cords and maybe go with this. So more rapid fire questions, if we want to call them that. And we're going to, these all deal, this next section, with election integrity, which has been certainly a persistent issue nationwide and in recent years. So we've seen that come to the fore many times. And the candidate who is likely to be at the top of Hoosiers' ballots on the Republican side, Donald Trump, certainly has weighed in quite a bit on the issue of what he sees as a lack of election integrity. So, show of hands. Raise your hands if you are confident in the integrity of Indiana's elections.
Oh,
right, Rittenhour. Mr. Chambers, Mr. Hill, Mr. Doden, Ms. Crouch are all confident in the integrity of our elections, leaving Ms. Rittenhour. That's one way to get 15 seconds. Go for it. Why are you not confident in our election integrity?
Well, I'll tell you, in order for me to be confident in our election integrity, I really want to see more involving voters. And I can tell you that it is the hardest thing in the world to get on the ballot. Getting the signatures is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I can also tell you that all around the state, many people don't even know that it's time to vote right now. I think our Secretary of State was actually out of the country. So I just think it's wise for us to be paying attention to how much attention is going on the voting process.
So you're blaming everybody else for not having election integrity.
That's a significant number of Republicans in Indiana, certainly, and elsewhere, agree with President Trump's claim that the 2020 election was stolen. Raise your hand if you agree that the election was stolen.
That question cannot be answered yes or no. That is not a yes or no question.
That's funny because I asked it as a yes or no question.
Well, it involves facts. That we
yes.
don't
Do you?
possess.
Let me reframe it,
conjecture.
Counselor. Is Joe Biden the duly elected president of the United States?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
All right. Anybody disagree? Very good.
Wait, I just want to make a statement because I just think that's an unfair question. Let's just be very clear. What happened in the 2020 election that everybody should agree on is that it wasn't properly adjudicated. So they should have spent more time investigating that election, and it wasn't it was not investigated.
Let's go.
So that's an unfair question.
Let's go.
I think we know
Finally.
where you come down. No, listen. Raise your. All right.
Anomalies in that election. I went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning with President Trump winning, and woke up in the morning and he was losing. There are anomalies that we can't understand, we don't know about, so we cannot answer.
I'll just say for a question
able
that's
to
impossible
talk about
to answer,
this
you just
4
answered
years
it.
ago.
So,
Finally.
next try again.
answer is yes or no.
Raise your hand. Well, you did. Raise your hand if you will recognize the results of the November election for president, regardless of the outcome. Raise your hand if you will recognize the outcome of the presidential election in November.
We're not going to, you're asking us to say something that hasn't even happened yet. We plan on governing the state of Indiana. We would like to base that on facts.
Well,
Rittenhour.
I'm just saying that's a departure from convention. Oftentimes, those seeking the highest office in the state of Indiana who do subscribe to the notion that our elections are sound and a pillar of democracy would commit to agreeing with the outcome of the presidential
But what
contest.
we're saying is that there's no way for us to know what happens between now and then. And so for us to go out and say a country that is sought after by many places all over the world,
right.
we could be under
Let's try
any
one
kind
more.
of an
Let's try
attack.
this
I mean,
one.
we can't.
Let's try this one.
Be irresponsible.
All right, we're going to try this one.
She's losing. He's
All right.
losing control.
Michigan, Illinois, what's going on in those states?
All
Those
right,
states have
let's try this
problems.
one. This one you can address, I think. Senator Braun, who again is not here this evening, received Donald Trump's endorsement for governor. How many of you would have welcomed President Trump's endorsement?
Oh, Doden.
Maybe that's a better question.
Yeah, I'm not here to tell you whether you should or shouldn't. I'm just asking you the question. You all would
Doden.
have
It seems like you're really trying to set us up and cause division in our party, and we don't appreciate it.
Ooh. It's a simple
Ms.
question.
Rittenauer-
Would you be okay with an
Ms.
endorsement
Rittenauer,
by
I think
Trump?
the party is doing quite capably on its own, creating some division.
We're focused on
all right.
for the people of Indiana.
All right.
Who's endorsing us?
We're going to move on to the next open-ended question. This goes to Mr. Hill.
This is very
I do appreciate the
interesting.
vigor, by the way. The U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments this week in a case that could decide whether government can criminalize homelessness. Do you support laws ticketing or arresting people who sleep outdoors in public spaces? I'll give you a minute to respond to that, Mr. Hill.
I support communities having laws that prohibit camping and participating in the public in areas of housing. I think that communities can move homelessness, and homelessness is an issue that's not about homelessness or housing as much as it is about mental illness and drug addiction. So we need to be able to provide shelters for people who require shelters, but we also need to make sure that we remove dangerous situations from our streets. And people living in the streets is bad for them, it's bad for the rest of us, and I support communities being able to eradicate that process with compassion, but doing so in a manner that keeps us safe and clean and our communities
Get
open.
the junkies away from civilians. That's
All
all
right,
we're really asking for.
Mr. Doden, before you do, let me just say I appreciate your enthusiasm for the various candidates, but it takes away from the time that we have for the questions. So please be mindful of that. Mr. Doden.
Well, this is at the heart of our capital zone proposal, where we want to have people feel safe and be safe in our downtown Indianapolis, where we've invested a lot of money as taxpayers. But we also want to make sure we have resources to help people overcome addiction and be restored to their families, be restored to their community. And we're going to work with the private sector and local 501c3s to make sure that we have the resources to help people overcome their addiction, and that's going to be an important part of what
You're
I
going to
do as
have to
governor
convince a
in the state
bunch of
Indiana.
junkies.
Ms. Crouch, should
that
government have
drugs
the
aren't that
opportunity
important.
to arrest or ticket the homeless?
You know, the bigger issue here is mental illness and addiction, and I'm the only candidate that says it'll be a top priority for me. We've seen a 20% increase in anxiety and depression among our population since
No
COVID,
help from you and
but a
Holcomb.
60% increase among young people. They are the future of Indiana. Suicide's the second leading cause of death among young people, and many of our homeless, in fact, I would dare say most of our homeless people, struggle with mental illness and addiction. That's the bigger issue we should be talking about and addressing.
Ms. Rittenauer.
Indiana,
Here we
you
go.
are a good state,
Oh, my God.
and you recognize what's taking place right now. In our state, we care about our military veterans, which are oftentimes homeless. We are certainly a state that believes in law and order. There's definitely a candidate missing from the stage that did not support the police. But I support the police
whatever.
and I support
All
law and order.
lies.
But for our homeless issues, we definitely want to be those that are going and working with the already organizations all over our state that are caring for people that are in that state of mind. I also don't believe the government should be involved in the mental illness conversation. And I think that you should be asking yourself, if the government did what they did to you during COVID, what exactly are they going to be doing with people that have mental illness?
Well, seeing as how the government made
right,
mental
Mr.
illness
Chambers.
worse.
I seem to be the only candidate that's talking about economic opportunity and growing our economy, lifting people up through higher wages and full employment. I think that's where a lot of this mental illness starts, is lack of economic
It's not the
opportunity. Let's
fentanyl?
just start there. Number one, our Protect and Serve plan, our policy that we rolled out on public safety, addresses bringing back behavioral health centers, because our police officers, our firefighters, are our mental health professionals today, and they didn't sign up for that. We closed those facilities 30 years ago. We need to refund those behavioral health centers, number one, and we need to talk about and really focus on repeat and violent offenders, not ticketing homeless people. Let's get the repeat and violent offenders off the streets and deal with our bail system.
Who's doing it, though,
All right.
Chambers?
And, thank you all. And
Who's
again,
letting that happen?
I would ask that you refrain from applause. You can smother them with hugs and kisses as soon as this is over and have pep rallies should you desire. But back to the questions at hand, and this goes to Mr. Doden. Why are school test scores and graduation rates stagnating in Indiana? What innovative ideas do you have to change that and make improvements? 1 minute, please.
Yeah, well, we have a constitutional obligation and a moral obligation to do the best job we can to educate our kids. And that's why I'm for parental choice. I think it's been very good for us to give parents choice. Every kid is different. We had different kids in our family that had different needs. That's why I'm a big fan of vouchers and competition. Even our public school administrators will tell me behind closed doors that this has helped make them better. But we also have a teacher investment program. We're going to invest in our teachers. We have a teacher crisis, especially in our small towns. And this teacher investment program goes right to the teachers. It's their income tax and property tax free. It's about a $5,000 pay raise for the average teacher. And then we're going to fund early childhood education. We have $1 billion coming due from good fiscal management. We put a stake in the ground and said it's just inappropriate for us to even allow or think about that we get people to the third grade, kids to the third grade and can't read. Let's solve that earlier, and let's make sure that we invest in the future of our kids. That's one of the most important things.
That $1 billion that he's
Crouch.
talking about is supposed to go to property taxes.
I want to create a
so we don't
lifetime
have to have
education
them.
system focused on 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and reasoning. We will teach our children how to think, not what to think. And I want to
Arithmetic.
take the 5 agencies that deal with education and workforce training and put them into one, where now everyone's on the same page, the same software system, focused on making sure that our children are prepared for that next step upon graduation, whether it's enlistment, employment, enrollment, or apprenticeship.
Ms. Rittenauer?
Indiana, there's an educational crisis taking place in this state. Nobody has been talking about it for the last 2.5 years, but I have. I've selected as my head of education Paige Miller. She has 30 years experience in the classroom and her master's in administration. K through 5, we're going to restore the focus on academics, unlike what was set up here on stage. There is a heavy focus on CRT and SEL that is taking up classroom time. We want to make sure that we bring trade back in our 7th and 8th grade. We want to bring in the private sector to talk to our 6th graders about how technology and AI is affecting their profession. We are ready to step up and become the training capital of the United States of America. That is who Hoosiers are. That is Indiana goodness.
All right.
Indiana
Mr. Chambers, your
goodness.
education strategy.
Thank you. This is our biggest challenge and our biggest opportunity. Our educational system is very backwards looking. It needs to be pointed forward into a modern economy, teaching kids to be ready for a modern economy. 20% of our kids can't read going in from 3rd grade to 4th grade. We have a literacy problem in 2024 in Indiana. That's unacceptable.
candidate that
65% of
knows.
our kids can't pass an iLearn math test graduating 6th grade. That's unacceptable. We are not preparing our kids for economic prosperity in the future. We need to make education individualized to the kid. Kids learn differently today than they did 20 or 30 years ago. We need to make sure that our educational system is parent-centered. We're focused on trades in 7th grade, and we need to get more money to teachers and less to buildings and administrative costs.
Mr. Hill.
We need to have an education system that's free of federal entanglements. And while I support choice and vouchers, the reality is we don't have much of a choice when our options are some of the failing schools that we have in the state of Indiana. We need to make sure that we go back to the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we need to add civics, and we need to have high academic standards as we're moving forward. My wife is a teacher. My 5 children were products of public education. We understand what's necessary. We need to have parental responsibility along with parental rights in terms of education so that we
That's
have
a better
partnership between
answer.
teachers and parents moving their children's education forward.
If I may just follow up, when you're talking about entanglements, and I know you've used that phrase at most of the debates where you all have met, are you suggesting you would not take federal funding?
I would urge local schools to quit taking the federal dollars that are tied with federal programs, et cetera. The federal government acts like a crack dealer. They dangle money out in front of you,
You
and
want
then
some crack?
you have to ride their programs. I asked the superintendent once, how much of your budget is federal dollars, and he said 7%. how much of what you do is pertaining to maintaining or attracting that 7%. Over 50% of what they do is tied to those federal dollars. If we get rid of the federal dollars, local schools have the ability to direct their own ability moving forward with their own educational programs.
Anybody else think that the federal government's an educational crack dealer? Ms. Rittenauer.
Yes, the federal government, the Department of Education, is constantly dipping its hands into the state, and then we're obligated to do whatever they're asking us to do, which in this case is programs like CRT and SEL. But we also want to take into consideration that as everyone up on stage who has worked currently with the current administration is complaining about our scores, they were focused on the IEDC while our children were failing in school.
Oh my God.
That is unacceptable.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on federal education? Ms. Crouch.
Yeah, I don't think we should take money, federal money, that has strings attached that run contrary to who we are and what we believe in as Hoosiers. And so as governor, I'll make sure that my Department of Education and the Superintendent of Public Instruction does not take that kind of money that has the strings attached, that puts us in a direction that is different from our values and what we believe.
In fairness, anyone else want to weigh in? All right.
You
Let's
already
move
had your
on to the
chance,
next question. This is for Ms. Crouch. As you pointed out, you have served in both the executive and legislative branches. Certainly you held office at the county level as well. And you've headed several agencies in your role as lieutenant governor. At the same time, you've said there's room to make government more efficient. We've talked a lot about audits and so forth. Can you name one state agency that you would downsize or eliminate, and tell us why?
Just about all of them.
Elimination or downsizing?
We have both. You know, one of the things that we want to do is totally modernize.
You won't be
state
governor over
government.
much of a, if you do all of them.
Want to totally modernize state government. Being able to take our 100 boards, agencies, and commissions and get them down to a more manageable size. But we want to remove rules and regulations that add to the cost of doing business and don't make sense. And then in addition to that, we want to have outside independent audits so we can determine how we can do a better job and how we can do it more cost effectively and efficiently. We will realize cost savings that then we can put towards new programs. We aren't the only state doing this. Iowa is doing this, and they have projected with their reorganization of their state government, they will realize $215 million of savings over 4 years. We are 5 times the size of Iowa. So yes, we modernize, we totally reorganize, we will realize cost savings that then can be put towards new programs and new services for Hoosiers, and give you your money back.
All right, Ms. Rittenauer.
One of the programs that, one of the departments that we would be
Look at all that empty seating.
decentralizing is the Department of Equity and Inclusion, the DEI. What we would like to do is we'd like to decentralize that and put that in all of our very small towns all over the state of Indiana that really want to be included. And we would like to change then that name to a Better Citizen, because we want to have a focus in our state on our Constitution and how the many immigrants that have come here lawfully need to be studying that Constitution, not to mention those that are here that are not legal, which we probably should also talk about at some point in time. But we want to definitely be those that are shrinking government, not expanding government. And so again, Hoosiers, if you want a politician, there's everybody on the left end of the stage. If you want a person for the people, I'm running for governor and I ask for your vote.
Mr. Chambers, anything you would want to eliminate or downsize?
John, I've been reinventing business for a living for 40 years. I've been building a company and reshaping it and building a team and addressing the challenges of an ever-changing marketplace. Suzanne Crouch, she ran the housing agency and she ran Okra and she didn't do a thing. It's been the same agency. It hasn't produced any more housing units. It hasn't had any more efficiency. So she's talking about things she's going to do, but she hasn't done the things that's right on her plate within her portfolio now. I mean, come on. You need a CEO in this state. We need somebody to run things like a business, to shrink government, to get regulation out of people's lives.
Need someone who's
That's going to take someone from outside government. It's not going to take a legislator to do that.
Ms. Crouch, I will get to you, but let's stick with the order here, Mr. Hill. Agencies you would like to downsize?
Well, I
or
appreciate Jamie's decentralization of DEI, but I'm going to get rid of it altogether on day one.
Oh, but not
we
the
need to
GOP
eliminate
DEI. Okay.
diversity, equity, inclusion in our state government. Diversity is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of excellence. Inclusion is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of competence. And equity is a wonderful thing, but not at the cost of fairness. And along with that, we're going to take a good look at the Indiana Department of Education. There's over 250 staffers making a lot of money at the Department of Education, and you still got third graders who can't read. How about cutting that in half? We're going to get started with that as one example.
Mr. Doden, any agencies you see fit to pare back or eliminate?
Yeah, I've talked about this over the last 3 years. One of the most important things the governor does is hire the 30 agency heads that employ 30,000 people, spend $22 billion of state money and $22 billion of federal money. And I'm the only candidate on the stage that has said every agency head will have to reapply for their job. What we've been doing is collecting talent and names of people who are willing to come in and serve. Our experts suggest that there's about 15% of waste right now that we can get out of the system, and that's going to be the focus of my administration, bringing the most talented people to bear to make sure that these agencies serve the people of Indiana.
Ms. Crouch, the suggestion was that you didn't do enough to create ample affordable housing. Would you like to respond?
As Lieutenant Governor, I have more responsibilities and duties than any other Lieutenant Governor in the country. I head up 4 agencies. I'm Secretary of Agriculture and Rural Development. I head up the Community Development Association. I also head up the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, Indiana Destination Development Corporation. All of those agencies have been focused on how to make Indiana grow, how to create more housing units, particularly for those that are vulnerable, those with disabilities, homeless veterans, 2,700 units that have been added, first-time home buyers assistance, $2 billion investment in main streets. I stand on my record. We have been doing a good job to be able to help Hoosiers, and we're going to continue to do that when we eliminate the state income tax and put a focus on those struggling with mental illness and addiction.
Bringing it back to the tax.
I'll give you 15 seconds.
Yes, I just want to point out to Hoosiers that this is the debate, right? Because we are actually talking about a conversation about socialism. It just doesn't look like that. We have to decide in the state of Indiana, are we conservatives or are we not conservatives? If we're conservatives, we believe in less government, not all of these departments expanding and expanding to solve more and more problems in our communities. We actually believe the private sector should step in and solve the problems, not the government. And when you elect people that believe the government is the answer, you get bigger government and more taxes.
Good
All
point.
Right. We're about to hit the hour mark, and we'll be bidding farewell to some of our broadcast partners. Anybody, 15 seconds on this notion of housing, and anybody want to weigh in on that? By the time I look at you, and my 15 seconds will be up. All right. Well, what we will do is this. We are going to pause for a moment, as I said, to wish some of our broadcast audience farewell, as some of the TV and radio stations move on to other programming. The final 30 minutes, don't go anywhere, the final 30 minutes of the Indiana Debate Commission's GOP gubernatorial primary debate can be found online via the websites of media outlets across the state or at indianadebatecommission.com. A recording of the full debate will also be available shortly after this is finished. And we'd also like to take this moment to thank our supporters.
So what, we're on a 15. Okay. Hold on. Okay, first off, the only way to get rid of taxes is to eliminate one and spread that tax over to something else. That was a rough draft plan that I saw. This whole third grade reading thing is much bigger than they're letting on.
Back where we left off with another question, open-ended question.
I'll explain to it after this is
response,
over.
if you would like to take it. This goes to Ms. Rittenauer. Indiana has an abortion law that bans most abortions from day one of pregnancy and only allows termination up to 10 weeks in cases of rape or incest, up to 20 weeks in the case of fetal anomaly, or in cases where the pregnant individual's physical health or life is at risk. Do you support current statute in Indiana, or does the ban go too far or not far enough in your mind? 1 minute.
Hoosiers, I'm for life. The
There we
reason
go,
I'm
Indiana
for life
goodness.
is because I believe in the creator of life. I also believe in a concept that I know is one that you know. You reap what you sow. If you sow life, you'll reap life. Right now in the state of Indiana, we have put exceptions when it comes to abortion. And I'm not talking about the exceptions that are made, which really aren't exceptions. They're more medical decisions between two patients, the mother and the baby. I'm not talking about those scenarios. But we've made exceptions. If you look and see how many abortions took place in 2023 and the gestation age, you will see that it was higher than prior years. We need to be a state that says we are for life, because we are in a conversation right now in our country about how our future is going to end up. And if we want to be a country that is for goodness, we need to be a country that supports life from the very beginning all the way to the end. And so I am a candidate, a governor candidate, that is more than willing and oh so ready to have that conversation with Jennifer McCormick. I know that she's been courting governor candidates right now to do that, but we'll have that conversation after May 7th.
Thank you. Mr. Chambers, is the law currently in Indiana where it should be in your view, or too stringent or not stringent enough?
I'm pro-life. I believe the exceptions are important, but
I like how the
what I hear
camera's
from
stuck on
Hoosiers going
Rick
around
Howard.
the state is about property taxes. I hear about quality of life issues. I hear about education and healthcare issues, and creating an economy to lift people up, to grow families, and that's where my focus would be.
I'm here about the money.
Well, I
That's
brought
all I care.
2,411 aborted babies back from Illinois to have them buried in Indiana to establish their humanity. And our statutes are fine until we don't enforce them. And we have a problem right now with TPRs. Terminated pregnancy reports are not being filed by the health department, and the governor, the current governor, and the administration are not supporting that. As governor, I will direct the health department to file for public notice the termination of pregnancy reports to make sure that we can enforce our abortion ban. It's no good to us if we can't enforce it, and that's what's happening currently.
Ms. Crouch.
I am pro-life.
Microphone. I think it's Doden,
Oh,
there,
I'm-
Want me
buddy.
to go before?
I'm
Do you want me
sorry.
to speak for Eric?
Unintentional. No.
Look, I've
Please,
been
Mr.
clear
Dunn,
on this
forgive me.
topic from day one. I'm ardently pro-life. It's a human rights issue, and it's a religious issue for me. And I think that I was really proud of our General Assembly for passing a pro-life law right away, as soon as they could. The law, I think, is settled, and that's why we're focused on things like zero-cost adoption that allows our 13,000 kids in foster care to get in
That'll
loving
be
homes,
weaponized.
and that allows us to strengthen the family. And these are issues that everyone's getting behind, people are excited about. One of the most important things that we can do is strengthen the family and make sure that we have strong families, and that's what we're going to focus on.
Now, Ms. Crouch.
I am pro-life. My record is clear. And I cast a tie-breaking vote to strengthen Indiana's abortion laws. And today, Indiana is one of the most pro-life states in the country. But it's equally important that we protect and save life and support those mothers and those babies. And it's why
She's shaking.
I am so proud that we have dedicated $45 million to supporting pregnant women, to supporting mothers, and to supporting those children up to 2 years of age, to be able to give them the kind of support that indicates that we protect, but we also support life at all stages.
Let's stay with this subject for a moment, and maybe we can address your questions in this one. All 5 members of the current Indiana Supreme Court were appointed by Republican governors. In handing down that court's decision on Indiana's abortion law, which, as you pointed out, was one of the first and most stringent in the country, a majority of those members of the court found that Article 1, Section 1 of Indiana's Constitution does give women the right to, in cases of threat to their life and well-being, physical well-being, to, in fact, they have a right to abortion. As far as I know, that's the first time the court has staked out that particular position. Did that court, do you agree or disagree with that court? Let's do this starting with a show of hands, and I know several of you other. Do you agree with the 5 members of the Supreme Court, a majority of whom said that women have this right under certain circumstances when they're facing death or significant physical harm under Article 1, Section 1 of the Indiana Constitution? How many agree with the majority of the Indiana Supreme Court?
I just think this is very difficult because, as everybody knows, with court opinions, they're very individual per case. I don't know if that was a case precedent that they're now setting. I have no idea the circumstances of the specific person that brought that case forward. But I think that what we have said is that a mom and a baby, whenever they are approached in a situation that is difficult for the mother's life, it's the baby and the mother's life that's at stake there. And I would support the doctor making a decision for both. So I don't know really where that puts me with your question.
Well, the question simply was, did the 5 members of the Supreme Court, or the majority of those, get it right? Nobody raised the hand that said they thought they got it right, correct? Okay.
Well, I just want to say something else. I'm so sorry, because this is actually a really big issue on the conservative platform, and we don't tend to talk about it very much, which is concerning. SCOTUS, whenever they put their opinion together after Roe v. Wade, it was a phenomenal opinion. Every conservative should read it. They essentially said that it needs to go back to the states, that when Roe v. Wade was declared way back when, that it wasn't done in a manner that was fitting. They actually talked about how at the time there was no case precedent, and that they should have looked out at the states at the time that Roe v. Wade took place.
All right.
And if they had done that,
I'm
they
gonna-
would have seen
I'm
the
gonna have
states
to
were
cut you
not
off.
It's
on
just that
abortion.
simple, honestly.
All right, let's
Which I think it
stick,
should be.
at the risk of dwelling on this, this is an important issue. You correctly pointed out this is a subject important to conservatives and progressives alike. Let's start this open-ended question, related but unrelated, and I guess we will start with Mr. Chambers then. Most of you in previous debates have indicated support for in vitro fertilization, or IVF. How do you reconcile your pro-life views with the fact that typically in order to create life using IVF, you generally have to destroy embryos because the process creates embryos that simply aren't going to be used?
Quite the conundrum you're in,
Is that
isn't
tough
it?
to reconcile? Let's start with you,
Well,
Mr. Chambers.
First and foremost, I mean, the joy of my life has been my 28-year-old son, and I want that joy to be spread to all Hoosiers. And so I do support IVF and want it to be available to as many Hoosiers as can possibly be to grow their families, period.
Let's just go right down the line. 30 seconds.
I believe in a culture of life, and along with that culture of life is the opportunity for couples, loving couples who want to have children, who are not able to have children, to participate in an in vitro process. I support that moving forward. And on top of that, I want to support enforcement of our abortion ban. And what I would want to know from all of my opponents, are you willing to step up to the plate and enforce the TPRs, making sure that the health department is providing TPRs so that we can enforce the abortion? I'd like to know that, because so far I'm the only candidate that has spoken out that says we will enforce the terminated pregnancy reports to make sure that we can enforce the law.
Mr. Doden.
Yeah, so we're going to work with the General Assembly to protect
not your
IVF.
turn yet, Rittenhour.
We want families to grow. We
Chill
want
out.
strong families, and that's an important part of what we're going to do. I also will make sure that all of our agencies follow the law and report what they're supposed to report in a timely fashion. That's going to be a really important part of my administration, and we've made that clear.
Ms. Crouch.
You know, I am pro-life. My record's clear. But as a woman and as a mother, I cannot fathom the pain that a couple or a mother goes through or woman goes through who wants so desperately to have a baby and hasn't been able to have it. So we have to wrap our arms around these women, and we have to support them and support life.
I'm not going to talk about it.
And give them the right to be able to bring children into this world.
All right. Ms. Rittenhour.
I'm a firm believer in life, and I think everyone should have the opportunity to have life. I also think that it's interesting that we are talking about this specifically, noting that there's a lot of aborted fetuses that take place that are put in vaccines, and we haven't talked about that at all. And yet we are in a state that was recommending, and really even people were losing their jobs for not getting those vaccines. I would also just want to point out, to answer Curtis Hill's question, yes, I would absolutely support the transparency that we're looking for with these abortion reports. And I would further say that we are 5 candidates that are running for governor in the state of Indiana on the conservative ticket. And I think it's very fair for us to say to Governor Holcomb, we are all asking you together to support transparency and get those reports to the people.
All right. Now, those reports traditionally have been under Indiana statute, as I understand it, because they contain medical information, have been redacted by the Department of Health.
I was the Attorney General in the state. I was the Attorney General in the state. They were not medical records before. They're not medical records now. Any information that
they were
would be able to identify someone has been taken out of the program. So get your facts straight.
Get your facts straight, son.
My facts are merely that the DOA, Department of Health, had in fact been redacting that information. So if you have a concern, take it up with them. Mr. Chambers, different question. In what ways do you believe immigration at the southern border is affecting Indiana? A Lafayette resident wants to know, would candidates support cracking down on Hoosier businesses that employ undocumented immigrants?
Yeah.
The border is a
send a
huge challenge,
message.
the Biden border, I call it. And if Senator Brodin wasn't in Biden's basement tonight and he's here on the stage, we talk about his failure to put up legislation to lead on anything related to the border except going down and taking taxpayer-funded photo ops at the border. It's a challenge. A broken border, the front door's closed, the back door's flapping wide open. It's now a state problem. And so I would wear out my welcome in D.C., making
Yeah,
sure
I'm
that
sure
they understand
you
this
wouldn't.
is now putting our guardsmen at risk. Our guardsmen at risk. Senator Braun and Biden are putting our guardsmen at risk because they're doing
guy an
nothing about
idiot?
it. We have a fentanyl problem because of a broken border. So Hoosier lives, and then you have criminals coming into our state. Hoosier lives are at risk because of D.C.'s failure. It needs to be addressed, and a governor needs to be strong on this issue, not just send guards down and fund it.
He's not gonna talk bad about
We need to
Holcomb.
advocate for a strong border at a state level.
Mr. Hill, would you support cracking down on Hoosier businesses that employ undocumented workers?
Absolutely. Immigration is not supposed to be a state issue, but it has to be because the federal government and Senator Braun has abdicated their responsibility to making that happen.
what about Todd Young?
We need to send that
What about
the
Victoria
patrol down to the
Sparks?
border. I called for the National Guard, the
Ocean,
Indiana National Guard, to go down to
Baird,
the state of Texas before
yeah,
Governor Holcomb
Yoakum,
put that
Yakum,
forward. But
whatever it
step
is.
2 is no safe haven for illegal aliens in the state of Indiana. No sanctuary cities, no businesses that under the excuse of we need labor, we're going to hire just about anybody. We can't have it both ways. We're either going to stop illegal immigration or we're going to lay down for it. I'm not laying down for anybody.
What else? Or what? What are you gonna
Biden needs to do his job. Congress needs to do their job. And as your governor, we're going to wake up every day working hard to embarrass the federal government into better performance.
That's so
what I can
cringe.
tell you we're going to do. Now, in the meantime, when they're not doing their job, then it's incumbent on us to support our governors at the border. That's why I've said we will send the National Guard to the border to help protect the border, support our governors. We're going to support our law enforcement. Rule of law is the foundation to this country, and we simply must follow the rule of law.
I'm the only one who has an answer
Ms.
to
Crouch.
it.
Due to the failed policies of the Biden administration, we now have 9 million illegals in this country. And last year alone, we stopped almost 200 people at the border on the terrorist watch list. Every state is a border state, including Indiana. And so as governor, I will send National Guard down to help protect our southern borders. But I also will protect Indiana's borders, making sure that we don't get that influx of illegals
It's already
that bring
happening,
the deadly
man.
fentanyl,
It's already
that also
happening.
bring human trafficking. It's absolutely incumbent that we keep Indiana strong. That's why in 2011, as a state representative, I voted to prohibit sanctuary cities in Indiana. As governor, if they come here, we'll send them to sanctuary cities in other states.
Ms. Rittenhour.
Yeah, they
Yes,
already
I
here.
would just say, as,
What are you
as
going to do
Curtis
about it,
was just
though?
saying, that there are illegal immigrants that are already here in the state of Indiana. And so what you have, Indiana, is you have a very intense situation that's taken place because of a lack of leadership, and even, you could say, a president that was promoting illegal immigration. We do need to have a stop of illegal immigration at the border. Why any governors would be participating in an administrative solution from a logistical standpoint without actually stopping what's taking place there seems like it wouldn't make any kind of sense. But I would also say that I think the Conservative Party needs to support everyone that's waited lawfully to come in and do a fast track to citizenship
Nope.
for all of
Nope.
the immigrants that have waited
Nope.
lawfully. We
No
need to be a
fast track.
Conservative Party that is shining the light on that kind of immigration.
Everybody
and then we
sucks.
also need to
Jeez.
address the many that are here right now. Taking all of those people and putting them back at the border, to me, seems like a logistical nightmare. I think that we need to have some kind of pause, some kind of temporary situation where
No.
those people are not citizens but are able to get some kind of a certificate so
No.
that they can work here in the state of Indiana and pay
No.
taxes.
This
She's the
follow-up
worst.
question of
She's
sorts,
the
we'll
worst about
probably just wanna
immigration.
do this with a show of hands initially. The Heritage Foundation, conservative think tank, this month proposed that states should charge tuition, essentially, of the undocumented children or the parents, certainly the children of undocumented immigrants, children who were not born here, essentially public school tuition for grades K through 12. Do you think that makes sense, the Heritage Foundation's proposal to, they argue that this is a burden in some states more than others in terms of providing this kind of education? Where do you all stand? If you
Speak
agree
English
with the Heritage
first.
Foundation
Problem solved.
that schools should, in fact, charge tuition of undocumented workers at kindergarten through 12, we've had much more discussion, certainly as a nation, about higher education. But what about, all right.
So, John, if I can...
If you would give us more time to answer the questions, we will. I mean, you're really kind of pigeonholed us a little bit, and these are really tough situations.
Listen, Americans are tired of illegal immigrants coming across our border. Hoosiers are tired of immigrants coming across the border.
Nobody has a plan to get them out, though.
In the last count. And so we need to enforce our laws. We need to fix our border. Our senator needs to do his job, which he's not doing. So I don't... Like,
just as one senator out of how many senators?
I don't think we...
His one's not doing his job.
All right, fair enough. Mr. Hill.
I don't know what the question was, but I think what you're getting at is... No, I'm serious. I think what you're getting at is do we want to have... Do we think that we want to charge illegals to be educated? And the answer is no. I don't want to have a system where illegals are able to buy their way into our citizenship, into our freedoms, into our rights. If you are here illegally, there's no price you can pay to gain access to what's ours. That's worth protecting.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the question that I
do.
apparently wasn't clear about?
I do.
Should kids be charged tuition if they're undocumented?
Well, again, I was just saying that one of the things that I suggest citizens, there is a major problem here that our Constitution does not actually address because we have a president that was being irresponsible and even hurting our nation by leaving the borders open. So we really do need to come to the table with strong governors that can come together and with the strength of the states come up with a logistical, administrative solution that will be good for all of the citizens of the state of Indiana and their states as well.
All right. We are almost to essentially closing statements, final question, but I do want to try this arm thrust one more time. And this I think we can get this one. Mask mandates should be banned in public schools in case of another pandemic. If you agree, raise your hands. I just wanted to see if the microphone was working. All right. With that, we have come to the close, essentially, of the final debate. You will each have 2 minutes to address anything that we left on the table tonight or make your final pitch to Hoosier voters. And let's make it simple. Mr. Chambers, go ahead.
Man, this moderator stinks.
Thank you for being here. What a journey. A lot of firsts in the Chambers family. In the last 7 months. I've never done this before. I'm not a politician. I'm certainly not a career politician.
Sure,
what I am is a grateful Hoosier. I started a company from nothing 40 years ago. And I felt the pains of starting a business from nothing. I worried about payroll and putting food on the table and gas in the car. It was a tough journey, but I'm grateful. And because of that, this is a service opportunity for me, not a career change. I believe in the potential of this state. I served for $1 a year for 2 years to grow our economy, to bring a business-like approach, to have optimism and urgency, to build a great team, to raise wages, to do things that hadn't been done, to go win. You know, and we weren't winning in a way that was leaving people behind. Wages matter. Being below U.S. average wage matters.
And
so we have to go play to win, because then when you have a growing economy, you can fix education. And government can actually shrink because unemployment goes down. Medicaid use goes down. So listen, with faith and courage, my wife and I decided to get into this race 7 months ago. We believe it's time for a CEO, someone to run it like a business.
Sure,
I was in Bedford over the weekend, Saturday night, and a man came up to me and said, "I just voted for you." And it gave me a shot down my spine. I was so humbled by that decision because I'm working hard to earn votes. I'm rolling out policy. I'm doing the work, going around meeting Hoosiers, listening, because that's what CEOs do. You have our senior senator who doesn't show up. He doesn't listen. He mails it in. He expects people to vote for them. I don't. I'm honored
Nobody
by
wants to vote
for
you, Chambers.
And that's
except
what
for
I've been working
neocons
to do, is
and
earn their
Democrats.
vote. And then I'll work hard to deliver on that effort and make Indiana better than it has ever been. So thank you. I would appreciate your support on May 7th.
Mr. Hill, your closing thoughts.
I'm running for governor because Hoosiers are hungry for proven conservative leadership. And the most important word that I've said there is proven leadership. How do you know? How do you know what someone's going to do going forward? It's based on their history and record of what they've done in the past. We're facing assaults on absolute truth on a regular basis, the manipulation of justice, the weaponization of race designed to keep you silent, and the sexualization of our children is destroying the America that we know and love. Don't let politicians give you a laundry list of conservative talking points and say that's enough. Prove that you can do the job. I believe in a culture of life. That's why when 2,411 Indiana aborted babies were found discovered in that Illinois garage, I didn't let it go. As your Attorney General, I went and brought them back to establish their humanity in death that was denied them in life, because I believe in a culture of life. I believe in liberty, freedom. That's why when the Holcomb Crouch administration announced its mask mandate in 2020, as your Attorney General, I put a stop to it. It's about freedom. It's about liberty. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe in truth. That's why when the Bureau of Motor Vehicles created a third gender, I put a stop to it as Attorney General. Why? Because the truth is there are only two genders, male and female, and that's worth fighting for. We need courage. We need to be able to, you need to be able to count on the people that are on this stage, the person on the stage that will get the job done. My name is Curtis Hill. I have a record of getting the job done. I would appreciate your support on May 7th.
Mr. Doden.
I think what's important for a leader is to have a bold vision for the people of Indiana and the ability to implement that vision. And we have more plans in writing than everyone on this stage combined. So what I'd encourage you to do is go to our website and interface with every one of our plans, help us improve them.
You must
But let me go through
interface
them quickly.
with
We
our
have a
plan.
plan to restore small towns for the first time ever in history. We've never had a plan for the 2.5 million people that live in small town Indiana. And it's at the core of our very culture in Indiana, and is at the core of business growth and everything that we should be about in this state. We have a plan for each of our regions to be one of the top in the country. You know, we took Fort Wayne from not ranked in 2015, built a team, and today it's the 32nd best place to live in the United States, according to U.S. News and World Report. We did that under 7 years. We can do that all over the state. We have a plan for zero-cost adoption to get our 13,000 kids in foster care and loving homes. We have a plan to protect our seniors, making sure that they do not lose their homes by freezing property taxes. You know, we have a plan to make sure that we grow every single part of our economy in all 92 counties. These are the kinds of things that you should be looking for. But as I close tonight, I'm going to ask you for some things. First of all, I'm going to make one observation.
I need you to
and
pray
I've said
for
this
me.
across the state. Fear and faith are incompatible. And there's a lot of fear right now in politics, a lot of fear. And fear and faith are incompatible. God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of what? Power, love, and a sound mind. So what I'm going to ask of you is to roll up your sleeves and put your faith to work. It's going to take a team effort from everyone in this room. Not one person up here is gifted enough to do it alone. I'm going to ask you to have a bold vision for your community and expect us to be a great partner to you. And then lastly, I'm going to ask you to pray for us. Pray for safety as we travel. Pray for wisdom, most importantly, and pray for a servant's heart. Thank you.
You know why I knew that? Because I've heard this so many times
Ms.
from him.
Crouch.
I'm running for governor because I care deeply about Indiana, and I care deeply about you. And I'm the only candidate on the stage that has the experience to be able to deliver results. We want to start by eliminating the state income tax. We're going to axe the tax.
We're gonna
We
axe
can
the
put
tax.
money into your pockets. Today it costs you $11,400 more than it did 3 years ago just to meet basic needs. Now my opponents, and I'm the only one saying we're going to eliminate a tax, my opponents say it's a gimmick, it can't happen. But what they're really saying is government needs more of your money and you need less of it. We can do it. As former vice chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, as former auditor of state, we can do it. If we limit government growth, if we end wasteful government spending, and we find efficiencies in government, we can give you money,
You're
we
in
can
the
allow small
government.
business to
You are
grow, and
number
we can
2
attract
right now.
people to Indiana. But I'm also the only candidate on this stage that has said that helping those that struggle with mental illness and addiction will be a top priority. Since COVID's 20% increase in anxiety and depression, suicide second leading cause
I
of death
wonder
among
why.
young people.
Feels
And
like
that is
something
why as
happened
governor,
4 years
we will
ago.
never have mass mandates or lockdowns because what it has done to all of us, but particularly our
What'd
children.
you do about it?
I'm running for governor because I want to make sure that Indiana does not become a California, New York, a Michigan, or an Illinois. I'm running to protect our conservative values. As governor, I'll make sure that parents control what's being taught to our children. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder with police and enforce our crime laws to the fullest. We'll axe the tax. We'll live within our means. We're not going to saddle our children and grandchildren with a mountain of debt. You see, the Indiana you and I will build will never cast aside our most vulnerable Hoosiers, the unborn, the elderly, the disabled, those struggling with mental illness and addiction, because they are our families, our friends, and our neighbors. We will never compromise in protecting faith, family, and freedom. I'm Suzanne Crouch. I'm running for governor. I ask for your vote on May 7th so we can build a better Indiana together. Thank you.
and Ms. Rittenauer.
Great clapping.
Well, Indiana, I would just ask you if you feel like any of that is actually happening right now. We live in a state that
Indiana
says
goodness.
that it's a red state and believes in conservative values, and yet I am trying to figure out where the conservatives are in government. Right now, we are having a big issue in our state because we're discussing matters that you and your communities are also discussing. There's a moral crisis, and there's a very big debate about socialism and capitalism. In our state, what that looks like is it looks like billion-dollar companies investing in this state. We have 100,000 jobs already available. These billion-dollar companies are bringing these high-paying jobs, but I ask you, for what workforce? Because on their watch, these politicians, our education has failed. There are over 100,000 third through eighth graders that are not able to do basic reading and math. That's a failure. 6 years ago, I was asked by the Lord, I was told that I would be the governor of the state of Indiana. I know that sounds wild.
It does.
I waited for 4 years for that confirmation. I was at Panera. A person came up to me and said that I had a love for more than just my family. It was for the people, and I should follow that love.
Are you having a
And then
bread
the
bowl,
next week, I heard a man say to me that I needed to let my past go and I needed to walk forward in the calling for my future. And he said I needed to allow the Lord to renew my mind that I might approve his pure and acceptable will. I want you to know, Indiana, that I've done a lot of walking around this state. And it really broke my heart when I saw a Hoosier in Boone County that said this is not our Indiana anymore. If you want billions of dollars in backroom business, choose the politicians. If you want someone that loves freedom, that's going to look out for your families and encourage you to grow in this state through the private sector and through the good people that you are, then check out our website at jamieforINGov.com, because that is Indiana goodness.
One thing you all made clear tonight is you don't like my yes or no, raise your hand questions. So I'm going to ask the last one, and I'm going to direct it at myself. I'm asking myself, who appreciated the fact that these candidates were willing to engage in a vigorous discussion of the issues of importance to Hoosiers? I'll raise my hand. I appreciate you all for doing that. And I also, to those who have watched or listened to this evening's debate, I thank you for caring about our state, its governance, and our collective future. Please remember to vote May 7. I'm John Schwantes, and on behalf of the Indiana Debate Commission, I thank you, and I wish you a good night.
Oh boy. Hold on, I want to see the back. I want to see if they're going to say or do anything over here. Hi, Suzanne. Good job, Suzanne. I want to see if they're going to fight. That's what I want to do. Anybody? Do I recognize anybody over here? Hey, good job, you know. Hey, good job. I like that Indiana goodness. So tell me, what were you eating at Panera Bread? Was it delicious? Were you having an fresh iced tea?
This
what do you think
program
about
is
that,
made possible with the support
Alright,
of
that's
the
enough out of you. Okay. Well, that was actually had a lot more fireworks than I expected. I thought it was going to be like the other two, where, yeah, I know, Jamie is a little bit lunatic-y, a special power, but she is probably the most normal person on that stage. Her immigrant plan is probably bar the worst one yet. The idea that is like, you know what? Why don't we just have these people that will not, they don't speak English, but it's okay. We'll give them a job anyway, but there's no way to communicate with them, which is the absolute worst. They won't normalize to our culture. I mean, you have some of these people that come from India and they don't know how to use toilet paper. And this is a true story. Someone was telling me that they worked in a factory, and they were first time that they were using toilet paper and they didn't know what to do with it, so they just put it in the trash can. So now you have this whole trash can full of poop. Yeah, it's crazy. And this was a while ago. This is like 7-8 years ago. I mean, these people, you know, they don't understand this culture. And I will tell you another story. This happened last year. I was on an IMPD ride along, and they were telling me the story of The woman called up the police. They said it was a domestic disturbance. The officer gets there and they see the woman getting dragged out of the apartment by her hair by her husband. And the officer goes like, "Hey, what's going on?" Blah blah blah. And the wife or the girlfriend of the guy who's pulling her hair was like, "No, no, it's okay. I did it bad. I did not cook my husband or boyfriend food. I didn't have dinner ready when he got home from work. I deserve this punishment." It's crazy. You know, they don't know how to normalize into is like you're not supposed to be beating the crap out of your girlfriend because the Salisbury steak wasn't ready when you got home. It's the worst thing. I know. I don't mean to laugh, but it's just we're saying that this is our strength, that this is okay, right? That we have these people that are okay with Sharia law, that are okay with having loud prayer at 3 in the morning while the rest of us have to go to sleep. But yeah, that happens. That's happening in Minnesota right now. So anyway, little quick recap of what's going on. Just a couple of notes that I made. The notes that I made. First off, still not a fan of Doden. Chambers, what did I say about Chambers? Is Chambers not the worst ever? He starts talking about abortion and then turns into, he's like, yeah, but the property taxes are the real problem. Here, hear me out. So anyway, Doden talks about the small town initiative, and but basically what he's wanting to do, he wants to turn every small town into a Carmel because he wants all that money to get wrapped up inside of there. Adoption. Why do I keep saying that it's weaponized? Well, this might be an unpopular opinion, but you have to look how gay people are. And what I mean by that is that what are they doing? They're always adopting little boys. And recently there was an arrest by a guy who was trying to adopt a little boy. This was just like a week or two ago. And they prevented him from adopting it because they found leaked chat information of how he was in like this pedo chat saying that he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this this little boy when I adopt it, I'm going to rape him. Yeah, that's what they found in the chat. And then you have other people that are two gay men that were sexually abusing their two adopted boys, and they were filming it and they were putting on the dark web for all this stuff. So I'm just saying, like, and that it's going to be legal. That's the scary part, is that you're going to try vetting these people and you're like, well, you listen, we don't want to have two gay men adopting a little boy because there are some psychopaths, some sexual abusers that always seem to go down this route, and they're going to say like, hey, you know what? That's a hate crime or whatever. It's not going to turn out well. That's all I'm saying. Every single person, except for Jamie Rittenhauer, was basically the IEDC needs to be tore down, never brought it back up again. Everybody forgets that, or if they didn't read Eric Doden's book, he talked about getting IEDC money for his Domo. Is that what it was called? I don't know anybody in the chat. For the Electric Works project in Fort Wayne. He also talked about, when I was at an event, of how there were these houses basically like right down the street from the now Electric Works that were only going for like 25, 30 grand, but now they're going for 250 grand. So now you just kicked everybody out of their own home because property taxes are going to be totally out of control. And remember, this was like before the property tax boom. Chambers, this guy is a complete slimy psychopath. He is totally okay with going with whatever route takes him so he can get these businesses in Indiana. And what did he talk about? He talked about Eli Lilly. Freudian slip. Who would have guessed, huh? Eli Lilly has him in their back pocket. He is an op for them, no doubt. Talking about having to compete with China on what? And then we got to compete with California. Businesses are moving out of California, Brad. Pay attention. It's that simple. You got so many companies moving out of these blue states, whether it's Boeing, whether it's Tesla, whether it's and now California now has $20 an hour minimum wage, and businesses are closing now. But there's more AI drive-through. There's more what are they? The touch screens. You can order up your own food. You're going to have robots replacing these fast food workers. It is what it is. You voted for it, California. Same thing. Doden says he wants to limit growth, but what he didn't say is he doesn't want to limit growth in rural areas. And I get it, rural areas. You want the money. Hey, I want the money like Hamilton County does. Well, you know, when you get that kind of Hamilton County money, you get those Hamilton County problems where you're having $500,000 homes where people can't afford even rent down there or up there for me. Jolly Rancher, don't mind it. You know who I'm talking to. And you can't, these rural people who are expecting to buy a home for 50 or 60 grand, sure, it might be a little bit rough shape. Now they're not being, well, now they can't. And same, now that I'm talking about that, it was really funny that Doden and Chambers were talking about assessed value. It's like, you know, it's different from county to county. Well, yeah, I live in Marion County and everybody's moving to Hamilton County. So your house is going to be worth a lot more than mine. Why? Because everybody's moving there. Ta-da! Rocket science, right? Who knew? Maybe I should have just ran for governor. I mean, if Rittenhour get on the stage, I would have demolished all of them on the debate stage. Third graders. All right, here we go. Favorite topic is the third grader conversation. Now, I haven't brought this up because I'm finishing up my questions that I want to ask teachers, but last Monday, I went to a school and I spent half the day. I read the children, actually read to children, and I talked to a bunch of teachers. Now, here's the thing about this whole third grade proficiency test. They're lumping everybody into the same bucket. So, like, kids that are having special ed, kids that can't even speak English, that don't even know how to take the test, and general education learners that have no problems. They're lumping them all in the same bucket for this proficiency test. And they're saying, it's like, oh, we have this whole problem. It's like, yeah, but you're not spreading it out. I guarantee you these numbers are skewed, crazily skewed, because you're not separating anything. And that's really the conversation we got to be having. That's something that they never talked about. And you want to know why? Because they're not talking to teachers. They're talking to superintendents that make $300,000 a year. They're talking to superintendents that one of them had to leave in Cedar Grove because he was mismanaging his funds and they couldn't track of what his money was being spent on. This is the problem with all these candidates. They're not one of us. They're not for the people. I would even say Rittenhour is not one of us either. And by the way, her having Paige Miller as her superintendent for the state education, bold move, Jamie. Bold move. You were better off trying to get Tony Kinnett or Micah Beckwith as that. So the abortion thing too. Very interesting what Curtis Hill said. He's not wrong. I would take it a step further from what I found out from a few weeks ago, if anybody's still listening, that these babies were getting thrown into a garbage disposal, basically, and getting ground up and then thrown into the trash. Literally, like literally. This is why there is a law put in place for that not to happen. It's where babies either had to be buried or cremated, and then, you know, I'm not going to go any further than that, but there was somebody that tried suing Indiana for that, where they just wanted to have the fetus. They were an abortion expert. They wanted to have the dead fetus thrown into a hefty bag, spun all around, and then just thrown into the recycling bin like everything else. Absolutely disgusting, you know, but Curtis Hill wasn't wrong on that. And here's the, you know, they were talking about human trafficking. Guess what? The new I-69 project is going to make human trafficking worse. Why? Because they can't stop now. Do me a favor, if anybody doesn't believe me, go to 465 down to 37 South. That is the new I-69. Look how much faster you can get down there. You could hit Louisville in like an hour from there. And what do you think is going to happen? More trafficking. There's even an Epstein house off 144 in Greenwood. Don't believe me? Go check it out. Or, you know, DM me, or if you want to know the exact address, I'll give it to you. I don't want to get too much in trouble. And Hill, what did I say at the very beginning about the DEI thing? He wants to get rid of DEI in Indiana, but he doesn't want to get it out of the GOP. Double proved. You guys probably didn't believe me when I said that, and then he said that, huh? Go back to the mouthwash from a week or two ago. You'll see it. And then finally, Doden, when they asked about the mask mandate, who was the last one that rose their hand about the mask mandate? Go back and watch. He was just like, sure. You want to know why he didn't care? Because he was probably all for it. Of course, there's no record of this, but I would have been like, right here, never again. We will never have these restrictions again. No mask mandates, no forced vaccinations, no misdemeanors for not wearing a mask. Never going to happen again under my watch. That's what I wanted to hear. And that shows that that's kind of stuff was never affected by them. They probably went through it the whole time, and they're like, yeah, no big deal. It's a mask, We're all in this together kind of BS. And that's kind of stuff should not be happening. I want to see some energy out there. I mean, really, the only person that had any energy is Jamie Rittenhauer. But after that whole immigration thing, she is. And Suzanne Crouch sounds like Jared Taylor. Go look him up. So I think the only person who came out with the W here is Mike Braun. Because he wasn't there. This was well played, okay? No one's going to be talking about Mike Braun being there. They're going to talk about the moderator sucking. They're going to talk about how much of a clusterfuck the debate was. Braun is not going to get... He basically came out of this thing totally unscathed. Impressive work. Exactly what Trump did during the GOP debate. Gotta say, good plan by him. I'm just glad I didn't have to see the Canadian tuxedo again this time. Someone tell Braun he needs to put on a suit and tie. Because I can't stand that whole Levi shirt anymore in khakis. It's just kind of embarrassing. Everybody should have, every guy on that stage should have been wearing a suit and tie. Doden didn't want to. He stuck with the flannel jacket. It is what it is. I think that's the only flannel jacket that he has because I've seen him quite a few times. So, just to top this all off, my ranking of governor candidates stands. I think if there was a negative that I could put anybody, it would be Brad Chambers. He is the absolute worst. So, that's where I have it. If you want more questions, or if you have any questions, go ahead and DM me. But that's where I stand. I'm glad that some of you came on here and watched it with me. We watched it live. It was pretty awesome. It was a little bit of a CF at the beginning, but we got through it. And now, in about 20 minutes, Mouthwash is going to be on Facebook. Mouthwash TV, the fastest growing show on the internet with John Schmitz. You can watch it there. If you're still watching this for a recording version or whatever, there was a committee meeting last night for Indy Council. I will be doing the video tomorrow. It was a really long meeting. It was over 2 hours, so be prepared to be bored. I will do it in 2 parts because it's going to be very boring, I'm sure, and full of bullshit, like they always are. Go.